Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. This week, the federal government has taken back millions of dollars set aside for public radio stations. Allegheny Mountain Radio is among the rural stations fighting to stay on the air.
We do it because we are very proud of the services that we give to our listeners and our communities, and we intend to keep that up.
A book by a West Virginia artist illustrates the tiny worlds of mountain critters, like a lizard that changes color.
And then it dove under a leaf and ate a beetle. It stayed under there for a long time, and so I got curious and I lifted up the leaf and it had turned bright green, and I was shook.
And geocaching gets folks outside to play detective and find hidden treasures.
That's the beauty of geocaching. Whether you're young or you're old, it's kind of got something for everyone.
You'll hear these stories and more this week inside Appalachia.
Support for this program is brought to you by Solar Holler, building on West Virginia's history of powering the nation by bringing solar power to the coalfields. Information at solarholler.com. Support for this program is provided by the Thrasher Group, an architecture, engineering, and field services firm serving West Virginia clients and communities since 1983. More information at thethrashergroup.com.
Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. In 1967, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Public Broadcasting Act that established the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. For nearly 60 years, the CPB has supported educational television and radio programming across the country. TV shows for children, like Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, documentaries like Ken Burns' Civil War, and radio shows like Inside Appalachia. This month, the CPB will begin winding down its operations. That's a result of a Republican-led clawback of already approved funds by Congress. The funding cuts will mostly affect NPR and PBS affiliates like our home station. WVPB will lose more than $1 million between its radio and television operations this year. Smaller stations are being hit especially hard, like Allegheny Mountain Radio on the Virginia-West Virginia border. Scott Smith is Allegheny Mountain Radio's general manager. Thank you for coming on Inside Appalachia to speak with us.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here.
On Inside Appalachia's webpage, Allegheny Mountain Radio is the first name on the list of affiliate stations that carry the show. But for those that aren't as familiar, can you share a little bit about the station, where you're located, and what makes y'all a little different from other public radio stations?
We are a cooperative of radio stations. We are located in the Appalachian Mountains. We're right on the Virginia-West Virginia border, and we actually have stations in both of those states. Our first station, the mother station, if you will, was WVMR, which is in Dunmore, West Virginia. It started its operations in 1991. In 1996, we added two more physical locations in Virginia, WVLS, which is in Monterey, Virginia, and WCHG, which is in Hot Springs, Virginia. The way our system is set up, we can broadcast from any one of the three stations, and that broadcast is mirrored or repeated on the other two. So it's usually one unified signal. The biggest exception to that usually comes in high school fall football season. We split up the network so the folks in Pocahontas can hear the Warriors game and the people in Bath County can hear the Chargers game. What makes us unique, I think, is, first of all, we exist in an area where cell coverage is spotty at best and non-existent at worst. There are just very small pockets in the three counties that we are located in where cell service is available. To put a little bit extra on top of that, our population tends to skew a bit older, and they are people who are perhaps more inclined to turn to traditional media sources rather than the new ways of getting information. So they might turn on their radio dial quicker than they would grab their smartphone to find out what's going on, get their news, their entertainment, their school closures, their weather forecasts, their emergency alerts. Heck, we even do lost and found pet notices. I read a found pet notice several years ago for an emu that was wandering around Highland County. So we are hyper-local, and we serve communities that perhaps are a bit different just because of our rural location and the folks that make it up.
So Congress just passed a bill to claw back a little over $1 billion in funding for public radio and television. How's that affected y'all there at Allegheny Mountain Radio?
Well, it obviously affects us very much in terms of the future and who we are and what we do moving forward. Any given year, as a rule of thumb, we would get 60 to 65% of our income from community service grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Obviously, those are now no longer an option, so now we are grappling with how we move ahead, having lost 60 to 65% of our income. Fortunately, we do have a reserve that we are able to draw on for the time being so we can continue operations exactly as is. We haven't called for any changes of location or reduction of personnel. We're keeping on just exactly the way we have been for the foreseeable future. But the foreseeable future isn't forever, and when you're drawing on reserves, that is obviously not a sustainable business model moving forward. So what we're going to do is, first of all, look where we can cut costs while still maintaining our core mission and services that we do. We'll look to expand our other streams of revenue, which are private donations and underwriting, and we'll look for other funding sources that we can hopefully use to mitigate some of the loss. We're absolutely not giving up and rolling over because we're all very passionate about what we do. We're all very dedicated to what we do. Nobody works or volunteers here at Allegheny Mountain Radio for the money. I can assure you of that. We do it because we are very proud of the services that we give to our listeners and our communities, and we intend to keep that up.
What's the mood there like? And I'm thinking both in terms of inside the station and staff morale, but also among your listeners. What are you hearing from them?
Since this has happened and since our story has broken nationwide, if you will, I really never thought I would utter the words Allegheny Mountain Radio and viral in the same sentence, but it's kind of become a situation like that. As one news organization picked it up and did a story, others picked it up and followed up, and that's still going on. Obviously, I'm talking to you here on Inside Appalachia the same way. The response, both locally and nationwide, has been, it's been something that it's hard for me to wrap my mind around. The support has poured in, both in terms of sharing our story on public media to raise awareness, in terms of messages of support, and in terms of financial support. So you can't receive the amount of good vibes and support that we have gotten and not let it harden your resolve to keep on doing what you're doing. It's very moving, it's very motivating, and it's very validating in a way that I find hard to put into words. I can talk about the importance of Allegheny Mountain Radio all day long, but unless someone hears that and unless someone agrees with that, then it's just me talking. When someone hears and agrees with that and sends a message of support or sends some financial support, that is absolute validation at its highest level that drives you to keep doing what you're doing.
Well, Scott is a native of the Allegheny Highlands with a lot of family in your coverage area. I appreciate what Allegheny Mountain Radio does. Thank you for speaking with us here on Inside Appalachia.
Absolutely, Mason. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to get the message out about Allegheny Mountain Radio, who we are, and what we do. And to sum it up with something I've said so much recently, I ought to either put it on a business card or maybe a new tattoo. I'm not sure. We're still here, and we're going to keep doing exactly what we do until we absolutely cannot do that anymore.
That was Scott Smith, General Manager of Allegheny Mountain Radio. Appalachia has a water problem. In southern West Virginia, some communities have waited more than 30 years for municipal systems to deliver clean drinking water. Meanwhile, they rely on churches and other organizations for bottled water. In the tiny town of Annawalt, West Virginia, Wendy Welch attended a water distribution day and brings us this story.
In front of the fire station in the tiny town of Annawalt, clean drinking water is rushing from a 500-gallon tank into 1-gallon jugs. Filling those jugs is local resident Joey Fields.
I'm fire chief of Annawalt Fire Department and the captain of Gary Fire Department. I just help where I can help with.
Like many small towns in West Virginia, Annawalt has a complicated and enduring water problem. Also, like many towns in West Virginia, Annawalt used to be a coal town. In the 1940s, coal companies built water systems that carried water to houses inside town limits. By the 1980s, people on city water were experiencing regular outages as old and corroded pipes broke. In the early 2000s, the town turned maintenance of the antiquated water system over to the Public Service District, which lacked enough funds to do all of the needed fixes at once. So problems persist to this day. That's why the United Methodist Disaster Relief Team activates a system of volunteers to bring the 500-gallon tank and a whole lot of clean jugs to distribute water to rural areas in McDowell County. Annawalt distribution is every other Thursday. Diane Farmer and Peggy Bailey are volunteers. There are also residents who live with a lack of clean drinking water.
Water lines are very old, and they break down a lot.
Yeah.
And some
Spring
people,
leak.
they don't have water for certain periods during the day, but up Boyd's Chapel way, everybody's on the private well.
Boyd's Chapel is outside town limits. Being on a private well doesn't help much with water woes around Annawalt. People outside town limits used to get clean drinking water through wells or springs on their property, but even that water is unsafe now.
I've lived there. I'm 72, and I've lived there 70 years, just on a different part of the property. And it was okay until, I think, about 86. That's when they started drilling gas wells.
Things went from bad to worse. In the early 2000s, coal companies began blasting. Again, Joey Fields.
The blasting tore our well up. So when the water's off any length of time, we don't have any source of water due to a lot of the wells being contaminated by the blasting.
For people on the town system, water shutoffs are a regular occurrence. A woman who's come to pick up jugs for herself and a neighbor says sometimes the water goes off for days at a time. She doesn't want her name used, so I'll call her Miss L.
You wake up and they have a leak somewhere, so the water's off, and you don't have a warning about when it's going to be off.
When the water is on, Miss L uses it for household cleaning, but
I don't drink my water. I do not drink it.
Neither does Brennan McGraw. McGraw took a break from putting in a new pump house to come down to the fire station and fetch water. Even with new filters on his well, he doesn't drink from it.
Everybody's got filters around here. You don't have nothing. So. I don't drink it no way.
McGraw is knowledgeable about what's in the water, which is why he won't drink it.
It's like a bacterial iron, and it's coming from the coal seams. Sulfur is in the coal. It actually makes determination on how they sell their coal, how much sulfur is in it. And the sulfur comes out in the water that's coming through the coal seams.
Diane Farmer says she doesn't believe any of the coal or gas companies working in McDowell County will ever be held to account, past or present.
The coal companies, They change names often enough of the company to not be held. And I'm not against coal mining. I'm not. I just want clean water. Yeah.
Farmer is quick to add that the nearby town of Gary was built by coal companies, who supplied the workers with houses and services. The others agree, both that coal is important to their history and that coal companies will never be held accountable for what's happened to their water. Again, Brennan McGraw.
We can't fight the big companies. The water system is what needs to be. The government should be set up that if there's a public service in your county that supplies water, that county should be responsible to service water to anyone in that county that needs water.
Miss L also looks to the government.
The people up in Charleston that's over the water systems, they're supposed to make sure all the towns have usable drinking water. They should make sure every town has this, not just certain towns in the state where there's more prominent people living. They don't have these issues. It's always the issues is in rural counties, So it's like we are always forgotten, like we're not human.
It turns out the state has had multiple opportunities to remember people in rural areas, but with mixed results. From Anawalt, I'm Wendy Welch.
In February, flooding killed at least 27 people in Kentucky and West Virginia and required water rescues in Virginia and Tennessee. It also destroyed homes and businesses. Now, 8 months later, federal and state assistance has been slow to arrive. WVPB's Chris Schultz reports.
Reverend Brad Davis has to enter his house in Welch in McDowell County via the basement, which completely filled with water as repairs are made. Light peeks in from the slats of the subfloor above, stripped back to mitigate the damage. Even getting to this point has been a struggle.
As you can imagine, cleaning up after a flood with dirty water is a difficult task, right?
In the kitchen, emptied of flood-damaged appliances, a wall calendar is still hung on February, a totem of the moment things went awry. On February 15th, the Tug Fork River outside of Welch crested at just over 22 feet, tied for its highest recorded level according to federal river gauges. 14 counties in West Virginia were impacted by widespread flooding. Just down the road from Davis's home, 3 people died when their truck was swept off the road by floodwaters. 6 months on, communities across the region are struggling to recover or, at best, live with the realities that the flood has left behind. Community members like Davis say a lot of help was quick to arrive from volunteers and donations, but federal and state assistance has been limited.
Before the flood, people here would tell you that this is a forgotten place, an abandoned place, that those in power, those in charge have in effect turned their backs on us. And I think the state's response to the flooding kind of reinforced that.
Heading out of town on the Black Diamond Highway, the road narrows to a single lane. The southbound lane was washed out in the flood, exposing piping and conduit on the Tug Forks embankment. Farther down the road in the town of Gary, residents like Wesley Hurt are left wondering how to fix their homes. With his claim to FEMA rejected 3 times, Hurt has resorted to doing what he can, like covering his house in tarps.
We can't even live in our house because I got the whole house stripped, all the drywall down, and we already bought drywall to put back up, but I can't get nobody to put it up because I don't know how to do.
Down the road from Hurt, 7 homes remain cut off from the world. Sandwiched between a bend in the Tug Fork River and train tracks, the bridge connecting Sunburst Drive collapsed during the flooding. Residents like Dolores Johnson have to hike out along the train tracks.
So I've been walking ever since February the 15th. The only way we can get in and out is for me personally to walk a mile in and a mile out. I am 77 years old.
Of the 14 counties that were flood impacted in West Virginia, only 7 were approved for federal individual assistance. A dozen were approved for public assistance, but that is little help for the residents of Sunburst Drive. As Johnson says, replacing the bridge is caught in a bureaucratic quagmire.
They said that it was a private bridge. I told them the private bridge is gone. We need a public bridge so the public can get in and out to us and we can get out of there.
Senator Roland Roberts, a Republican from Raleigh County, acknowledges the frustration around stalled recovery efforts, but he says elected officials will have to wait until they're back together and in committee to take serious action on any issue.
Because we are all scattered around, I don't think there will be any real collaboration until we get into Charleston in the September interims.
But Reverend Davis points out the flood happened just a few days into the state's regular legislative session, and to the average person, it seems that there are funds to help.
From my understanding, we have something like $2.3 billion with a B in the rainy day fund in the state. If we can't use that money for an actual rainy day, the rainiest of days that causes catastrophic flooding, to help us recover from it, then why do we have one?
Davis says that leaves communities to fend for themselves.
And again, that's one of the things that the flood has really underscored, really highlighted. Nobody is coming to save us. It's up to us.
For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Chris Schultz in McDowell County.
We live at a time when a lot of us are attached to our devices. Coming up, a West Virginia artist puts her phone down to take a closer look at the tiny worlds found in nature. You're inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams.
Support for WVPB is provided by the Huntington Museum of Art, presenting Joyful Spirits, Haitian art from the Winslow Anderson Collection through February 8, 2026. Details at hmoa.org.
In 2022, artist Rosalie Hazlett set out on a trip to illustrate parts of the Appalachian Mountains that often get overlooked. That is, the tiny birds, reptiles, and other critters hiding beneath leaves or up in the trees. Her illustrations came together as Tiny Worlds of the Appalachian Mountains, an Artist's Journey. It's a stunning book, full of colorful images and thoughts Hazlett recorded as she spent hours exploring the mountains. In 2024, producer Bill Lynch spoke with Hazlett about the book.
To begin with, where did the idea of the project come from?
So I have always had a special affinity for small creatures ever since I got my first hamster when I was 8. I know a lot of kids go through hamster phases. I think mine was a little more intense than most kids. And that kind of spun off into a love for all rodents. And then that love for tiny creatures just kind of continued as I started to learn more about the natural world as I got older. And always wanted to be an artist, but wasn't really sure what to focus on with my art. And it wasn't until probably college and my early 20s that I realized that I could pair art and nature together and I could make work that celebrates the natural world. I started a personal project in 2017 called Tiny Worlds West Virginia. And that was just, my goal was to get better at watercolor and also to learn a little bit about a new creature every month. And in 2021, I got really hyped up on caffeine one day and I took a big walk and I was like, what if I illustrate a whole bunch of tiny critters from the whole Appalachian mountain range? And before I could talk myself down from it, I called the guy that I was going to marry in a week and I was like, can we move out of our apartment and do this huge trip and document all these things? And he was like, yeah, let's do it.
Tell me about your husband. And this is, it's a pretty big leap to do something like this.
Yeah.
So tell me about him.
So he is a water engineer and he works remotely. And so it worked out that he was able to keep working while we were on the road. So we ended up going on this trip. It was 6 months in total, a continuous road trip. Started in Alabama, which is the southernmost part of the Appalachians. And then we ended in Newfoundland, which is the northernmost part in North America. It extends into Scotland. And pretty much every day I would go out and look for interesting small critters, plants, fungi, slime molds, all sorts of stuff. And then I would document my observations with, words and then sketches and take pictures. And then I'd come back to wherever we were staying and I would illustrate what I saw using watercolor.
The trip itself and the places you went, how did you choose them?
So we wanted to take advantage of discounted rates at different rentals. And a lot of them, you have to stay in a place for 2 weeks or longer. We had like 6 main base camps all scattered throughout the mountains. We kind of just looked at a map of the Appalachian Mountains and we found these locations that were close to public lands. So national park or something nearby, state parks.
Words and pictures, which was harder to get down?
Oh, words. I've never really thought of myself as a writer. I've been a journaler my whole life. Like I kept very regular journals from the time I was like 5 to 18. Every day is documented. So I always like to record what I saw, but I never really tried to write essays or like poems or like polished writing. It was always just very casual. And so I kind of leaned into that for this book because I was really psyching myself out about the writing. I originally wanted it to be all illustrations and just the tiniest descriptions of what I saw. And then as I was working on it, I realized that it was becoming disjointed and I needed to tell the story more through words so that people could understand what was happening if they weren't there. On these long hikes, I'd be by myself, so much time in my own head. And so I would just jot down what I was thinking or what I was seeing in my phone in the notes app. And so I basically wrote the whole book while I was walking or sitting on a log because sometimes I'd be like tripping over stuff. So I'd stop and I'd sit on a log and I'd write out a observation or the beginning of an essay, and then I'd edit it later. And that actually works really well for this book because I want it to feel like you're walking alongside me through the mountains.
There's definitely a feeling of being in your thoughts. There's a lot of introspection in the book. You kind of gloss over portions of your childhood and even how you got there, which made me interested in your childhood, in your upbringing. You were homeschooled?
Yeah, I was homeschooled till I was about 12. Yeah, and I'm one of 7 kids, so had kind of a weird childhood, lived on a farm, was in a family band. I talk about a lot of these things in the book, and it was a very beautiful childhood, but a little weird.
The family band, tell me just a hair about that, because...
Yeah. So I have, let me see, I don't even know how many older siblings I have. I have 3 older siblings. Lost count. 3 older siblings. And so by the time I came along, there was already a family band established and they all played instruments. And so it was just kind of a thing that when you're born into my family, you are part of the band. And we were not a big deal, but we did travel around quite a bit to state fairs, festivals, churches, family reunions. And we'd all be standing up there with our old-timey instruments. It was very much like Americana music, so a lot of like John Prine and the Carter family. Yeah, we played lots of tunes together. My dad wrote a lot of the songs too. It was a good time, and it lasted until I was about 14, and I write about that in the book, that I was kind of the demise of the family band because I went to school and my peers found out about the band and they did not think it was cool, so... I ruined it. I broke up the band.
Well, this project, what was your favorite part about it?
Oh, well, there's so many things. One of the things that felt really special was just getting to dive deep into a project for a couple of years. So the trip took 6 months. Planning the trip and getting some grants to help pay for the trip and finding a publisher took a full year before we even left. Coming back afterward, I spent a year finishing all the paintings from those reference materials. So I was able just to kind of lose myself in the project, to lose myself in the places. Even after we got home, I had spent so much time in each place and was so present in each place that I was able to access those memories in a way that I haven't been able to before. So I'd be like working on the section about Quebec, and I would see my husband at lunch and I'd be like, he would ask me what I've been up to, and I'd be like, oh, I'm just in the woods of Quebec right now. Like mentally, like I was there because I had so much time in each place, and that was really a treat.
Do you have a favorite critter?
Oh, there's so many good critters. I'll tell you about 2. In Alabama, one of the very first things that we saw was a green anole lizard. and they're sort of like chameleons. They change color based on their temperature and mood. So I saw this little brown lizard on the trail, and it was holding very still. So I was very pleased, because usually small critters often, because they don't have a lot of defense mechanisms, they're very speedy. So that's a constant challenge with this book, because I only wanted to include things that I actually saw and got my own pictures of. So I couldn't, even though like hellbender salamanders are so iconic for this area, I didn't see one on the trip, so I couldn't include it. So I was watching this little lizard. It was holding still. I was very happy. And then it dove under a leaf and ate a beetle. It stayed under there for a long time. And so I got curious and I lifted up the leaf and it had turned bright green. And I was shook because I did not know that they changed colors. I just thought I was looking at this brown lizard, and then all of a sudden it's this beautiful lime green. So that was a really cool surprise and a lesson in like, just watching a critter for a long time will lead to interesting observations. And then the second one I want to talk about is actually an eastern screech owl that I saw after we returned from the trip. So after the 6 months on the road, we came back to the farm that I grew up on, and we lived there for a while. And my goal was just to see this place that I knew so intimately with fresh eyes after the trip. I wondered, after so many months of slow hiking and paying attention, what will I see that I might have missed before? One of the coolest things that I saw right around the farm was an eastern screech owl who lived in a hollow in a tree. And I just stumbled upon this owl one day, and I don't even know how I saw it. It was so camouflaged, but I was just like looking around and saw two eyes staring back at me from this hole. And that owl stayed there all winter long. And that's something that they often do to kind of stake their claim for nesting in the spring. That owl kind of became my muse when I got home, because it was really easy after seeing all this cool stuff on this long trip to think like, oh, what else is there to see in my home? Like, I know everything. It's less exciting. But then thinking about my owl being there and how like hidden it was and how I wouldn't have found it unless I'd been looking closely made me think like, oh, there's probably so much more here that is yet to discover. And that's been a really nice takeaway, is like, it's not always about going elsewhere to find that inspiration, that you can find it in your own backyard.
The book is Tiny Worlds of the Appalachian Mountains, An Artist's Journey by Rosalie Hazlett. Rosalie, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tiny Worlds of the Appalachian Mountains, An Artist's Journey is available from Mountaineer Books. Since this story aired, Hazlett's art has been shown throughout the region, and prints are sold all over the country. This summer, Hazlett opened a studio and shop in Elkins, West Virginia. It's called Meander. Visit a public park or mall parking lot, and you may pass a geocache without knowing it. Geocaches are containers of hidden treasures. To find one, you've got to use some detective skills. One of the best-known geocachers is West Virginia's Tim Eggleston. WVPB's Jack Walker met up with Eggleston in Berkeley County to talk about his geocaches and how they've shaped local tourism.
I meet Tim Eggleston at a highway welcome center in Berkeley County. When I walk inside, he's already talking to the attendant about ideas for new geocaches.
Geocaching does exactly what you said. Oh, yeah. It takes people that love history, and you can geocache.
Eggleston, who goes by the username West Virginia Tim online, says geocaching is hard not to talk about. He was introduced to the game by a church friend in 2008, and it's been on his mind since.
I love geocaching, okay? I mean, I'm not going to tell you I don't.
Think of geocaching like a treasure hunt. But instead of an X on a map, you follow coordinates on your phone or GPS to find a treasure chest. Prizes inside the containers tend to be scant. But Eggleston says it's not always about the reward itself. As an activity, geocaching has appeal across areas of interest.
Geocaching has something for absolutely everyone. If you like biking, you can bike to geocaches. If you like history, you can go find the history, spots that have historical significance. And most likely, there's a geocache there. That's the beauty of geocaching. Whether you're young or you're old, it's kind of got something for everyone. And everybody approaches the game differently.
For Eggleston, that personal approach to the game revolves around hiding geocaches. But his hides are far from ordinary, and we hiked to one at the Welcome Center to see how. Eggleston tends to hide large containers in plain sight. The catch is, there's a trick to getting into them.
It says I'm 10 feet away, so it takes me here.
He pioneered what's known as the gadget cache. These are geocaches that incorporate some sort of puzzle or mechanical challenge to get inside. The first gadget cache we found together was shaped like a birdhouse, but it had rings on the side. You yank in a particular way to release a container out the bottom.
So now all you gotta do is pull the right ring. You're not very good at this.
I'm not. I'm really not. After about 5 minutes of aimlessly pulling, Eggleston took pity and showed me how to open the box. The real ring that released the container was located on the back of the birdhouse, in a far less obvious spot.
This is what I call red herring.
That's red herring.
So this right here is a red herring. And most people think they've got it.
According to Eggleston, tricks like these can be confusing and even frustrating for some players. But they add an element of intrigue to an activity that can become repetitive over time. Eggleston knows firsthand that people travel to Berkeley County from around the world for his dozens of hides there. Many send him messages seeking travel tips. One family from the Netherlands even asked to crash at his home. When players really like a geocache, they can give it a favorite point online. Eggleston says Berkeley County has more favorite points than any other county in the United States. His geocaches alone have been found tens of thousands of times. Eggleston says he's inspired to hide geocaches largely because he wants more people to visit Berkeley County, supporting local tourism and business in the process. I wanted to hear more about the impact Eggleston's geocaches have had on Berkeley County's tourism industry. So we traveled together to the County Visitors Bureau in Martinsburg.
We had people come in from Ireland, England, Australia, Germany, especially Germany, Denmark, from all over the place, as well as from across the country. They come to Berkeley County specifically to geocache Tim's trails.
That's Mark Jordan, the Bureau's executive director. He said the boon is partly attributable to Berkeley County's proximity to Washington, D.C. For some travelers, a robust network of one-of-a-kind geocaches is the difference between spending another night in D.C. and making the hour-and-a-half drive to West Virginia. The Visitors Bureau also works with Eggleston directly, coordinating trails of new hides along public parks or historical areas. Sometimes they even offer rewards, like commemorative coins, for players who find them all.
It's caught on quite a bit. We have other counties in the state asking Tim how to do it. Of course, he's from Berkeley County and he won't help them. But he offers great advice.
Eggleston said more and more people want to learn about his creations and make their own for their communities. He's been invited to events nationwide. While he's steadfast in his allegiance to Berkeley County, he takes pride in helping others learn too. That's why he launched a YouTube page to show how he crafts the trick containers. To his surprise, it's raked in more than 1.7 million views.
I'm just an old guy. I'm not a YouTuber. I'm not an influencer. Now they call them influencers.
And while replicas may pop up around the world, Eggleston's hides are still regarded as the real deal, especially because he's still building new gadget caches, each time with an added twist players won't see coming. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Jack Walker in Berkeley County.
Cases of alpha-gal syndrome have been on the rise. The rare tick-borne illness causes a severe allergy to red meat. Alpha-gal now affects as many as 400,000 people in the U.S. WKYU's Derek Parham spoke to a woman in Warren County, Kentucky, whose life's work has been altered by the lifelong condition.
A full menagerie of raccoons, foxes, squirrels, possums, skunks, and just about everything in between takes up residence outside Lori Dawson's Bowling Green home. But to be clear, these aren't pets. They're injured and orphaned wildlife that Dawson works tirelessly to rehabilitate with hopes that they can be returned to their natural habitat.
The most I've ever had was 400. That was kind of a crazy year. That's when I was doing deer. But I would say now, without taking deer in, I'm probably more around the 300 mark.
Dawson's facility is one of few in Kentucky that are equipped to handle white-tailed deer and has been used to house herds of up to 30 deer at a time. But she had to let go of that part of her rescue mission. In 2020, she was diagnosed with what's known as alpha-gal syndrome, an illness caused by bites from the Lone Star tick. Dawson said unlike many other species, ticks are unavoidable when handling deer, and additional tick bites increase the disease's effects, including severe reactions after consuming red meat and any other products derived from mammals.
Anytime I ate, I would break out in hives. I would have difficulty breathing. I would have a lot of diarrhea, things like that. And I really had no idea, but you couldn't even get into a doctor. You know, everything was kind of closed down. So I finally talked to my doctor on the phone, and she was like, start logging everything you eat. Start, really keep a track.
It was another 8 months of allergic reactions, weight loss, and doctor's visits before she finally found an answer.
When I looked it up, it sounded just like my symptoms. So I called an allergist here in town, and I said, hey, I think I might have alpha-gal. And she was like, there are no cases of alpha-gal here. If you want to be tested, we can test you. It'll take about a week to get the results back, but that's probably not what you have.
After that test came back positive, Dawson was diagnosed with one of the first recorded cases of alpha-gal in Kentucky. For over a year, she'd been having allergic reactions to anything derived from red meat, from the meat itself to dairy products, gelatin, and even shampoo and body wash.
Your system mounts an immune response, notices alpha-gal as a foreign body, and then produces antibodies against it. So then the next time you come into contact with something that has alpha-gal, so for instance, red meat, then that's when your body notices that same molecule again and says, oh, this was a foreign invader last time, this is a foreign invader this time.
That's Hannah Tiffin, a professor of entomology at the University of Kentucky and one of the nation's leading researchers of tick-borne diseases. She's seen cases of alpha-gal on the rise since the early 2000s, with original counts around 1,000 cases nationwide.
Now it's thought to be probably closer to like 400,000 cases in the U.S., but that's not, the reported incidence is much lower than that, just because it's not a nationally notifiable disease to the CDC.
She says that rapid rise in alpha-gal cases can be seen across the board with tick-borne diseases like Lyme disease and Rocky Mountain spotted fever, largely due to a combination of residential development into wooded areas and the lasting effects of climate change on winter weather.
We're seeing less cold days in a row, and so that's what usually kills off tick populations. You need these cold days that are in a row and kind of last long enough that ticks can't survive.
Dawson remembers that her infected tick bite came in February after a warm week when she'd gone to check on her resident herd of deer. Now, 5 years later, while she may not be able to work in the deer field, the rest of her rescue operation remains in full swing.
Hey, I just went and picked up that raccoon. Can you hear it?
I'm Derek Parham in Bowling Green.
Coal mining is a dangerous job. Last year, there were 5 deaths at U.S. coal mines and 9 the year before. So it's important that miners develop skills in rescue operations. In July, coal miners from West Virginia and surrounding states met in Morgantown to compete in a rescue competition. WVPB's Curtis Tate has the story.
It's over 90 degrees as the sun beats down on a soccer pitch at Milan Park. The teams line up, 21 of them, but they're not here to kick a ball. These are coal miners, and despite the heat, they're wearing helmets and a self-contained breathing apparatus. Josh Brady, director of the Mining and Industrial Extension at West Virginia University, explains that in a real mine emergency, conditions would be much worse.
Look, it's hot out here. A lot of people want to talk about, oh my, we got a heat index over 90, the sun's beating on us. The sun blasts off this AstroTurf. These guys are wearing machines and it's hot. Yeah, it is, but it's nowhere near as hot and dangerous as it is when you have black smoke in front of your face and you're fighting a fire. These conditions are mild compared to that.
The field is set up with Division of Highways orange barriers to simulate the passages of an underground mining complex. Simulated hazards are placed in the way of the teams.
You know, there could be unsafe water levels, there can be unsafe roof and rib conditions, there can be ventilation problems, there can be gases that don't support life, gases that are explosive. What they're trying to do is find all those issues and correct them.
Some members are designated as victims who need to be rescued.
They're dressed like their team members. They're just patients wearing the same clothes. This individual out here on the left that just put his hand up, he's a patient waiting to be rescued. Right across that white tent, has his hand on his hips. So they're just standing in an area, but you can't just go get that individual and bypass all the hazards. You've got to correct all the hazards correctly, and then you're allowed to rescue him.
Coal mine fatalities have reached record lows in recent years. Some of that has resulted from a decline in production and jobs. The Mine Safety and Health Administration last recorded a death in a coal mine in February. There have been 4 fatalities in coal mines this year, 2 in West Virginia and 1 each in Ohio and Pennsylvania. Brady says the competition includes participants from those states and others, and the state's mine safety agencies provide support, he says.
So we get a great deal of support from the state agencies. West Virginia Miners Health Safety and Training has been very helpful to us. State of Ohio, state of Pennsylvania, state of Kentucky, Virginia has been very helpful, giving us great support. So state agencies do a great job.
One missing participant this year, the Pittsburgh Mine Research Division of the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. Its workers were put on administrative leave in April after Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. implemented a reduction in force at NIOSH. NIOSH also has an office in Morgantown where the Coal Worker Health Surveillance Program is based. With an order from a U.S. district judge in May, those workers were brought back, including the ones operating the mobile black lung clinic parked near the soccer field. The Mine Research Division workers, though, have not been called back.
We have historically always gotten support from NIOSH Pittsburgh. NIOSH in Morgantown usually brings their black lung screening group down to offer that to the miners that come in. A bunch of retired guys come in, but we are void of NIOSH support this year from a judging standpoint.
April marked 15 years since 29 miners were killed at the Upper Big Branch mine explosion in Raleigh County. Part of the purpose of the mine rescue competition, Brady says, is to prepare miners in case it happens and save lives.
I think the end message is we're delivering for mining companies who need to comply with the federal regulation, and we do it at the highest level. And we don't want to brag about it, but we're proud of it. And we enjoy the fact that we have 21 teams here from multiple companies who are displaying what you hope you never have to deploy. The whole idea is that you maintain your operation so you never have to do this. If you ever do need these individuals, they're prepared and ready to get your miners and protect your operation.
So the families of these miners won't have to get the call they long feared. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Curtis Tate in Morgantown.
Last month, WVPB's Randy Yohe took a trip to the Appalachian String Band Music Festival. The festival is well known for old-time music, but people also come to Clifftop to dance. Flatfoot dance.
Flatfoot dancing is tough to define. An elderly West Virginia flatfooter of note once said, "The music just goes in your ear, down through your soul, and comes out through your feet." The Appalachian String Band Music Festival's Flatfoot Dance Contest draws a crowd of several hundred. Dancers in 3 divisions, youth, seniors, and open, flatfoot for esteemed judges on a piece of plywood to the same old-time tune. Asheville, North Carolina senior dancer Rodney Sutton won the whole shebang here a few times. Sutton notes that flatfoot dancing is not clogging.
I usually say to people that flat-footing is to clogging as old-time music is to bluegrass. You're not thinking about anybody else. You're just listening to you're the drummer yourself.
Dancer Becky Hill comes to the Clifftop West Virginia Fest from Washington, D.C. She enjoys flatfoot, clogging, and tap, defining all of them, flatfoot especially, as percussion dance.
And we're thinking about it as a musical instrument. So we're thinking about how the dance is akin to a drum set, and how it kind of can copy melody or give a counter rhythm or support the downbeat. So it's kind of like looking at it as if it's an instrument.
She's 39 now, but Michigander Greta Van Doren joined a flatfoot workshop here at Clifftop when she was just 18 and has been hoofing it back every year since. Van Doren plays music and square dances, but believes that flatfoot is at the heart of what music is to dancing.
Old-time music is dance music. It makes you want to move your body, and I think that the flatfoot dancing actually is even more of a part of the music itself than some forms of dance, because you are the drums, you are the percussion with your feet.
Rodney Sutton says his daughter is a second-generation flatfoot contest winner here. He says just like the old-time music that's danced to, flatfoot is meant to be passed on from the elders to the youngsters.
We have mentors here, and some of them are not dancing like they could 4 or 5 years ago, but it's the same thing happening. People learning from being in their families a lot of times and going to Saturday night dances, of which a lot of those have died out. So young people don't have the chance to be out on the floor with a bunch of really good flatfooters to pick it up from them. But this helps, and Clifftop is a big part of helping keep this tradition alive.
Flatfoot action is usually solo, not quite as fancy as clogging, and there are no standard steps. As that old-timer said, the music just goes in your ear, down through your soul, and comes out through your feet. But flatfoot definitely seems to travel by way of the heart. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Randy Yohe in Clifftop, West Virginia.
Till next time, thanks for joining us as we journey throughout Appalachia. Our theme music is by Matt Jackford. Other music this week was provided by Larry Rader, Tim Bing, Jeff Ellis, Joe Dobbs in the 1937 flood, Eric Vincent Huey, and Hello June. Bill Lynch is our producer. Abby Neff is our associate producer. Our executive producer is Eric Douglas. Kelly Libby is our editor. Our audio mixer is Patrick Stevens. You can find us on Instagram @inappalachia. You can also send us an email to insideappalachia@wvpublic.org. Visit wvpublic.org/insideappalachia to subscribe to our newsletter and stream all of our stories. Or look for Inside Appalachia on your favorite podcast app. Inside Appalachia is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.